Chapter 9, KC4, we'll look at why do less developed countries face obstacles to development, and we'll look specifically at the development through self-sufficiency approach and development through an international trade model approach. The goal is here that you would be able to differentiate between these two economic approaches and evaluate which one would be more profitable in development. And here is a list of the key terms that we will cover, some that are not included in your textbook. Just as a review, when I look at the different types of economic systems, a planned or command economic system is when the government is in total control of businesses, where they set the prices and quantities of goods and services. Free market economic system, the government is not in control at all. It's private ownership of businesses, which is influenced by the market, aka consumers, who in their demand for goods and services influences the supply and prices and stuff like that. Really in the world there's no perfect, complete planned or market economy. Usually it's a mixture of both government control of some industries and then private ownership. Also, subsistence economies is where it's basically a barter system, people who are just surviving. Usually these are subsistence agriculturalists or hunter-gatherer societies, and they might just trade their goods with each other. There's no money system. Alright, there are two different types of theories of development. These are broader looks at the different types of theories there are. There's structuralist theories, structuralist and liberalization theories. And so these two large camps of how countries do develop. So a structuralist would see that the idea that an LDC or any country would develop, it's stuck in some kind of cycle of underdevelopment by the global economic system that promotes inequality, and this would be like the dependency theory that we'll look at, which is basically Emanuel Wallerstein's world system analysis, and we'll look specifically at that, but that there's this dependency and that interdependence and a structure of hierarchy, and that countries kind of get stuck in these different levels of the hierarchy, and essentially there is a inequality in the global economic hierarchy. And then liberalization theories, largely we'll look at Rostow's modernization theory, claim that development is a process that all countries can go through to achieve modernization, and that they are free, liberal, they are free to do this. And we'll look at the 5 stages of Rostow's modernization theory, and much like the demographic transition model of the different stages that countries go through. Both of these models are based on the development of Western European and Anglo-American countries, which might not always accurately apply to non-Western countries. Right, so liberalization, the idea that countries are free, and they are free to move through these different stages of development at their own pace. Structuralists, that they are inherently a part of a global economic hierarchical structure at different levels, and they're kind of stuck in those different levels. Alright, so we're going to look more in depth, a little bit more in depth at each of these theories. Dependency theory, which is not covered in your book. So the idea, again, that periphery countries they develop things and they provide things that flow to core countries. And this flow from periphery countries to core countries enriches the core countries at the expense of the periphery countries. The political and economic relationships among these countries limit the ability of the LDCs to modernize and develop, because they are interdependent upon the core countries that they supply their goods, often factory products like clothing or TV, also services or natural resources. This whole idea that actions of one country directly impact the development of other countries is interdependent. The argument that Africa's dependence on European, their colonial occupiers, that relationship continues to keep Africa politically and economically inferior. So this interdependence upon nations, keeping LDCs and periphery countries in their peripheral status and core countries in their core status, and that resources flow from periphery to core, enriching the core and exploiting periphery countries, as they continue to be dependent on those core countries to provide the goods and services that core countries desire. This world system analysis, which is what we've been looking at, that the world is divided into three different developmental levels of core, semi-periphery, and periphery. This is Emanuel Wallerstein's world system theory, or world system analysis. Not all countries can become core countries. Core countries focus on higher skill and capital-intensive type production, and these core countries depend on the semi-periphery and periphery that focus on the low-skill and labor-intensive production. And just like the dependency theory states, core countries gain more power, more influence by exploiting the semi-periphery and peripheral countries. Modernization theory, which is what we'll be looking at with the Rostows, is this liberalization theory. It looks at this process, ongoing process, that each country goes through to develop as they become modern. There's traditional countries at the very, very beginning of the process, and then as they work through these different stages, they become more and more developed. And look at the internal factors of things inside the country that are important in this social evolution of a country, such as infrastructure, finances, resources, whether they be natural resources or a labor market or whatnot. This is just looking at that picture. It's actually the end of your chapter 9, looking at the world from a North Pole perspective, where you see that line that roughly goes along the 30-degree north parallel, divides the world into a global north, which you see inside that red circle, and a global south, outside. And inside this global north, inside is your core, and then outside is your semi-periphery and periphery. Alright, so if we're looking at why less developed countries are facing obstacles to development, we look at that there's this gap, there's this development gap between the MDCs, or we could call these developed nations, or first world nations, or global north nations, or core countries. Alright, there's a gap between these and the LDC, which are your developing nations, also called third world nations, LDCs, global south, or periphery and semi-periphery nations. When you look at the first two graphs, the natural increase rate and the infant mortality rate have stayed about the same. The gap between those two different regions of the world is staying about the same. But what we see happening in the last graph is that there is a gap that is widening between the gross domestic product, how much money a country makes. So we see that from LDCs to MDCs that gap is continuing to widen as MDCs continue to get wealthier and have more access to the resources, and LDCs are getting poor, have less and less access to resources. So if LDCs are going to develop, they must develop much more rapidly to reduce that GDP gap. So Rubenstein suggests that there's two ways that they can promote that development. One is to adopt policies, strategies that would help them successfully promote development, and the other way is that they need to get money. They need funding to pay for that development. So that's what we'll be looking at. All right, the first means or model of development is called the self-sufficiency model, also called a balanced growth. You might see in a test question, balanced growth. And self-sufficiency, basically, if you think about what it means to be self-sufficient, it means that you can do it all by yourself. You have no outside input. So basically that's what it is. We're a country developed by itself without the input of any other country or any influence. So elements of this would be that investments within the country are spread evenly across all sectors and all regions. So that means all sectors of society, meaning poor and wealthy, business, hospitals, education, healthcare, industry. I mean, everything gets equal pay, equal amount of money, equal support. Regions, we might look at, a northern versus southern region, or maybe like a urban versus rural region. So spread investments equally across all sectors and regions of society. So everybody has equal access to resources and money and help to develop. The pace is very modest. There's not a lot, it's not fast growth. Rural development keeping up with urban development. So because it's evenly spread throughout, it's very slow-paced growth, but everybody is helped. The focus is really to reduce poverty. You do not want income inequality. You want everybody to have, the same amount of money. It protects new businesses or small businesses from large business competition. This might save an inefficient business, but it will protect those small businesses that are just trying to get off the ground and often just cannot compete against these large businesses because large businesses have economies of scale to help them actually make a lot more money making things on a larger scale. It will limit imports to protect the domestic businesses. The domestic businesses are businesses within the country. So by limiting these imports, they might impose heavy taxes on things that are coming into the country, imports, to make them more costly and people don't want to buy them. Or a quota, making only a certain a number of products can come into the country. Require lots of licenses or just different, in a sense, hoops that businesses outside of the country need to go through to, provide a good or service. And this is all, again, to protect what's happening inside the country, because it's trying to protect and reduce that poverty and make sure everybody is helped. So India is an example that uses the self-sufficiency model. Any foreign company who wanted to import their goods had to do a lot of things to import, and it made it very costly, and it really limited the number of imported goods and services. Indians were supposed to produce goods for India and not to export those, is keep everything in the country. Some problems with this is that sometimes it's very inefficient. If everybody's going to get help, you don't necessarily need to try and improve the quality of your product or try to improve the process that you make your product, make it more cost effective. There's no need to, improve technology. And so because you're going to get that help from the government, there's no incentive to try and be innovative and always, be up to date in improving, and that competition with other businesses is not really there. Often another problem is a large bureaucracy. That's like very big government that has all these rules and restrictions and regulations, which can often make it difficult for businesses to do things that they need to get done. This breeds a lot of abuse and corruption, or just side skirting around the regulations, and by selling their product maybe illegally on the black market, or just makes it very difficult to maneuver with a business. The benefits is that there is equality. Everybody's cared for, small and large businesses, rural, urban society, wealthy and poor, and it protects those domestic workers, protects jobs in the country. People have jobs, they're taken care of. All right, now looking at another way to develop through international trade model. And this is largely looking at Rostow's modernization theory, and that countries develop through going through these 5 different stages. They need lots of money, that's capital, to invest in this development. And again, this was based on European countries and Anglo-American countries developing and going through an industrial revolution. This is based on Walter Rostow. You can see a picture of him here, who was an American economic historian, and he said that this happens in 5 stages. So stage 1, you can see down here, is a traditional society. There's subsistence agriculture, barter, where there's no money, they're just trading goods and services with each other. This is not a developed country at all. There's no development, just subsistence. Stage 2, this is called a transitional stage. So if a country wants to develop and develop fast and make lots of money, that they would do this through international trade. That means they need to develop something, either a good or a service that they have that somewhere else in the world, in another country, would like to purchase that good or take advantage of that service. And so with the stage 2, this transitional stage, is where the country, in a sense, probably government and groups of people who are in business or in leadership, think and plan and strategize what could they do, what could they produce, or what do they have as a country that they could sell, that other countries would want. So in this stage, they think about that, they specialize, they think about what could they do. They start thinking about their infrastructure here, road systems, communication systems, their education and training, and hospitals. What could they do to start developing what they are really good at, so that they can move on to the next stage, which is stage 3, to take off. So during this stage, this is actually when development happens. It starts. This is stage 2, is like the planning stage. Stage 3 is when development actually takes off. So they've chosen in stage 2 maybe 1, maybe 2 specific things that they're going to focus on in developing, help them make money. So maybe you can think about even Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a beautiful country. A lot of this environment is very beautiful, and people like to come to Costa Rica to see the beautiful environment. And so they see that as a resource that they have that can, make money off of. So they take that environment and they have become eco-tourists. destination. So this stage 3 then, they do everything they need to take off to start growing, start making money. They get the money that they need, growing investment, they start developing their infrastructure, political change, any kind of policies that they need to adopt to encourage this growth. It might be regional in certain areas where they're going to really focus on this particular region that they're going to make money. If they're going to be industrializing, do they have factories? Do they have to mine a resource that they're going to use for their industrialization process? So stage 3 is where the development actually begins, and they start with 1 or 2 different development strategies, and they focus on that and start making money with that. Stage 4, this is called the drive to maturity. This is now where they're doing really well. They were able to make money with the 1 or 2 industries that they invested in, and so now they take that money and they diversify. They start taking that money to invest in other different means of making money. So you don't want to stay here in stage 3, just in case if one of the investments that you have tried to develop, maybe the price, the world price of that product drops, or there's a natural disaster like in Costa Rica, and they're not able to, it destroys their environment, and they're not able to bring tourism or tourists, that they lose a lot of money. So when you just focus on 1 or 2 things to develop, you're taking a risk. So this stage 4, drive to maturity, you diversify. You want to try to now make money in a lot more different types of businesses, so that if the price falls out in one, you still have all these other means of making money. So diversification is going to provide safety. You have now more money to be innovative, so you can come up with some new innovative ways to improve what you were working on in stage 3, and then think how to capitalize that and grow those other things. You are less reliant on imports because you have a diversified economy, and so you're able to provide for the needs of your own community, not just focusing on 1 or 2 like it's in stage 3. You continue to invest in all of these different needs. Then stage 5 is your high mass consumption. And this is a very highly developed country like the United States and Western Europe. You not only have to, no more needing to focus on your heavy industries, but now you can focus on providing consumer goods to your public, because they are wealthy now and have the means to buy consumer goods. So you now have a consumer-oriented society and providing products for your consumers, your citizens. You still have your durable goods. Those are goods that will last a long time, like your cars or machinery. And then you also see the service sector become dominant. So you see more and more people are working in service sector jobs than in maybe industry, where you see maybe stage 4 more industry sector jobs here, your secondary sector jobs. So Rostow would say that countries move through these different stages in succession from stage 1 through stage 5. And here is another look at those stages. And I'll just move on. Just to give you an example of maybe countries in this stage, probably no country in traditional stage, maybe little pockets of countries within, but really no stage in traditional society, stage 1, which is, you could say this is related to the demographic transition stage 1, too. Stage 2, this might be many poor countries in Africa, which would also be in a demographic transition stage 2. Stage 3, these might be countries that are just starting to take off, like maybe even Bangladesh, or maybe some wealthier countries in Africa. Stage 4, I would say an example of this would be China or even India, that they've already developed, and they're seeing that they are able to invest in more than just what they started with. And then age of mass consumption in the United States and a lot of your Western European countries. All right, let's move on. Some examples of international trade model countries that have been able to develop this way. Your 4 Asian dragons, or these are also called little tigers. These are 4 countries in Asia: Hong Kong, which is really a part of China; Singapore, at the tip of the Malaysian peninsula; Taiwan, an island off the coast of China; and South Korea. All of these countries have developed without resources. They were able to develop by taking advantage of their very large, low-cost labor pool that were, this is much like Japan too, produce a lot of manufactured goods for a cheap price. Persian Gulf states like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, a lot of money from oil profits, and have allowed them to really put a lot of money into their infrastructure. And we see switching over to large-scale projects to develop their tourism industry. Just to talk about this vocabulary term, comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is the ability of a country or a place to produce a good or offer service better than another country. So this is what we're looking at with the international trade approach, is to find what your country does really well and capitalize on that, invest in that, and market that, and make money by trading that product or providing that service to the rest of the world. So trying to find the thing that you have a comparative advantage of. The problems with this international trade would be that at the very beginning there's this uneven resource distribution. You are focusing on just one or maybe 2 resources or products, and again, if that is a world market price or there's a natural disaster that destroys that industry, it can devastate a country's economy. Market stagnation. So if you have a product and you sell that product and now nobody wants to buy that product and you're trying to sell that product, you don't have anybody to buy that product, and so in a sense the market has stagnated. The market no longer wants that product. It's like almost even saturated. Everybody has the product, and so nobody else wants it, and so you can't sell that product. So that would be market stagnation. You can't move your product in a sense. There's an increased dependence on MDCs. We talked about the dependency model. That's what happens when you have LDCs. If they're focusing on selling something that they can sell to an MDC, they often do that at expense of meeting their own needs. Maybe they're selling a cash crop, or focusing their energy in developing, their mining of a valuable resource that they can sell to an MDC. And so that money is diverted to investing in those industries at the neglect and expense of taking care of their population. So Rubenstein, obviously, when he, in his description of these 2 strategies, the self-sufficiency and international trade model, the international trade model has actually allowed countries to make a lot more money. So since India has adopted the international trade model after using a self-sufficiency model, they have greatly increased their GDP, rapidly increased their GDP, albeit at the expense of some of their poor in their country. All right. Some other things just to look at. Looking at trade and financing, the globalization of trade and the impact on local economies. So with the globalization of trade, it allows each country to specialize on what they do best, look at their comparative advantage. So at the local level, they can specialize on, like one thing and sell it to the rest of the world, and they can make money on what they do well. But again, this is at the expense or at a risk with a very narrow focus of one thing. There is, like I said, a global drop in the prices or some kind of disaster causes it to hurt that particular industry or resource or service. It can have a devastating effect. But it allows local economies to do really, really well if they can focus on what they have a comparative advantage. World trade basically is a key term. It's buying and selling across national boundaries. It's not just trading within your own country, but you're trading your goods and services beyond your country's boundaries. Free trade zones are areas where there is free trade. So there's agreements between countries to eliminate any trade barriers like maybe export or import tariffs or taxes, any other policy that would hurt trade between these countries. So usually they agree to cooperate economically. And some examples of the four largest free trade zones, these are regional trading blocks, would be the AEASAN, which is the Southeastern Asian countries that have a free trade zone. European Union, which I have a map here, all the green countries here are the countries that are in the European Union as a free trade zone. MERCOSUR, that's South American countries, so all these countries here would be in a free trade zone, and then NAFTA, which is your Canada, United States, and Mexico. Right, looking at the World Trade Organization. So this organization works to reduce these barriers, to provide for free trade and provide a structure to help enforce the agreements that are set up between these, with these regional trading blocks. It's almost like maybe kind of policing or providing a structure to make sure that free trade happens. Criticisms of this are that it's anti-democratic, so it promotes the interests of the very large multinational corporations at the expense of small businesses that really can't compete with these large corporations. It definitely compromises the sovereignty of nations. So a nation is sovereign, meaning they have control over the laws within their own country. And when you have free trade between two different countries or more than one country, then your ability to make rules and laws within your own country are now compromised because you have to cooperate with that other country. Also, we see as an example, NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Agreement, hurts Mexican corn farmers who couldn't compete with the United States cheap government-subsidized corn. So there are some costs. There are some benefits. It allows a larger market for you to sell your product into, not just in your own country, but beyond your country's borders. All right, looking at these terms, transnational corporation also can be called a multinational corporation. So these are foreign companies, and they would directly invest in industries in another country through what's called the foreign direct investment. So this is an investment, not a loan. So a country like I have here, De Beers Gym Company, they might invest money into a Sierra Leone diamond mining operation, and that investment is they give money to the corporation or government or whoever is running the diamond mine, and if that diamond mine makes money, then part of that money goes back to De Beers. They get a percentage. So if the diamond mine goes bankrupt and is not able to continue to provide diamonds, then De Beers just loses that money. So it ends up just being a bad investment for them. So this is just a way for countries, LDCs, to get money by having countries and corporations outside of their country invest in them, provide them money. Again, not a loan. They don't have to pay this back. A conglomerate corporation is like transnational corporation largely, but these are a combination of two or more corporations. Usually they're involved in a variety of businesses, so they're multi-industry. And it's often a parent company that buys up smaller companies or subsidiaries, like Time Warner or Philip Morris, that would, be a large company and then buys up other smaller companies and makes money off of those other small companies that make business. We saw this in Food Inc., where you have large companies like Kraft buying up smaller organic small companies to provide, financial means for these organic companies to make it in, the organic, agricultural market. And then it also allows, the conglomerate who bought up that organic small farmer to make money off of them too, and provide the safety to take some risks. All right, so that's what a conglomerate corporation is.